So I'm joined by the father of true freshman at Michigan, Darion Green-Warren. His dad's name is Martin Warren. Martin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm just trying to keep up with the news. Every day, it feels like we get a full year's worth of news related just to the Big Ten. So, like, before you and I started talking, Dan Patrick tweets out that he got from a source that the Big Ten is now going to try to play football on October 10th of this year. Is that the
Right.
first time you're hearing that?
Um, I mean, being in the circle a little bit, you hear the rumors. You hear the rumors here and there that they might be playing. First, we heard they weren't playing, and then they might be playing, and so it's just kind of all over the place. I mean, you get messages from Darion here and there about they might play, they not play. It's just kind of all over the place. But about them restarting back up, yes. Recently, we just heard that possibly starting up Thanksgiving, but this was the first time I'm hearing about October 10th.
So before we got on another thing that happened in Michigan and really across the country, they announced that they're cutting 15 jobs and that they're not going to hire for jobs that they had applications out for. As I understand it, Darion is still on campus going to school. How do you feel about that?
That's a tough situation, man.
Mm.
It's the whole situation is tough in general because as a parent, you know, part of you like it's a pandemic. You see what's going on here in California, you see what's going on in other states, and then so obviously the safety of Darion is our first and foremost, most important thing.
So
For the other players, but also too, it's kind of like you see other schools gearing up to play football, like for example in the Big 12 and the SEC, and it's kind of like even the high schools, and it's kind of like, well, maybe the Big Ten probably jumped the gun here.
Well, I mean, that was kind of again the way that they have handled this. I can't get on board with that. I can get on
Right,
board with you making a decision, right? Because
right,
safety
right,
first and wanting to be out in front of that. But you put out a schedule. A week
right,
after that, you announce a postponement, and then we've had a full month of nobody knowing much of anything.
right,
Yet yesterday you get the vote that we got two
right,
sworn affidavits saying that, and now today you're getting the president on the phone with the Big Ten commissioner talking about what we got to do to get football in Big Ten country. All while I don't know what are they talking to y'all on a regular basis or
Well, well, yeah. One thing I can't say for Michigan and
okay.
Coach Harbaugh and the staff is they've kept us in the loop with everything that's been said and done behind the scenes. There's been parent Zoom meetings. He does like a weekly or a bi-weekly parent Zoom meeting where he keeps us informed on everything that's going on as far as the kids, as far as what's going on with the commissioner and the conference and everything, and then as far as the testing. Um, I'm one of the parents that supports the kids playing, and one of the reasons is for I can speak for the University of Michigan. Since Darion has arrived, there's been testing, there's been protocols, they have done everything in their power to make myself and Shantae feel safe as parents, as far as Darion being away from home. So I can only speak for the University of Michigan. I know every university, every conference is different in terms of funding, but as far as Michigan, they've been on it as far as protocols and Coach Harbaugh and the staff.
Well, and I want to get into that. I want to back up a little bit because
Oh,
nationally, the world was introduced to Darion at the All America game when we were all blissfully ignorant, right? We didn't know that
right.
any of this was on the table. What was that moment like for you and your family where he got to announce that he was going to attend Michigan?
It was huge. It was huge for our family. I think at the time, when you get the All American invite, it doesn't really resonate with you. But as a parent, when you sit back and relax and think about everything, it's huge. It's huge because I can remember, Darion being 10, 11 years old, and sitting on a Saturday afternoon watching the All American game with him, with former players as Joe Mixon and other players, Deshaun Jackson, announcing where they're going to school and just seeing the game in general. He's always said, I wanted to play in the All American Bowl. And as a parent, you always encourage your kids, but I always in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's a tough accomplishment. That's not something that they just give away. Like you have to go earn it. So he understood that from an early age. For it to culminate and end the way it ended, for him to be able to live his dream as a parent, that was huge for me. And then, obviously for him to incorporate his mom, he has that special relationship with his mother. For him to incorporate that, I mean, that was just big. That was just big. So at the time, I don't think my wife knew the magnitude of it, but when you get the calls and texts and emails from family and friends, like that was a huge moment for our family because in Darion's situation, it's his dream, but it took a group effort. These kids need support systems, and there are times where kids get down on themselves, the things that they have to go through with the recruiting. You want 30 offers, and as a parent, you want everything as a dad, so I can kind of flex my chest amongst my peers. But there's a lot that comes with that. I mean, there were times where the more offers you have, the more coaches are calling, and so it gets to a point where Darion's overwhelmed. And it just got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore for him because your phone is constantly ringing. You can't normally be a regular teenager just going through the ranks of high school. For me, I loved it because, my phone was blowing up with coaches and my wife. My wife was kind of like whatever with it, but, I enjoyed it. You know what I mean? I enjoyed talking to different coaches. But for Darion, when you look at it through his eyes, it got kind of annoying. And then, towards the end, it was like he really didn't know what he wanted to do. He was so torn amongst, his final choices it ultimately came down to USC and Michigan. And he was torn. I remember the day we signed, he woke up in the morning and he didn't know what he wanted to do. And I'm looking at my wife like, we got Michigan calling, we got USC calling. And it's like, oh my God, like I'm looking at my wife like, what is going on? And he's just like, I don't know. And I was like, wait a minute, we got Coach Harbaugh, we got Coach Houghton, they're calling and calling and I'm like, you got to make a decision. And it came down to he wanted to make it a group decision. So as a family, we sat there and everybody voted for what they voted for. And unanimously, it came out that Michigan was the best choice. So people don't understand what these kids go through because at the end of the day, they're 17, 18-year-old kids. And you have grown men calling and recruiting them. So it can be tough. People just see the side and kids not having offers, going through that process. You have these offers. It's hard for these kids. You have social media, you have the pressure here and there. So, it was a fun process, but towards the end, it got a little hectic.
So you said something in there that I thought was tremendously interesting, a lot actually, and I want to unpack two things in particular. One, the level-headedness of a kiddo, because you know me, I always call them kiddos,
right.
At 18 years old to be like, let me get the family in. Y'all are smarter than me. I mean, the group of us, we're going to be smarter together to do this. That's one. And then the other thing, a unanimous decision to go to Michigan. I mean, for folks that don't know, kids from Cali, like, as I understand it, you grow up with USC basically being silently committed until somebody else proves otherwise, right? So how did you guys come to the conclusion that unanimously Michigan was the choice?
Well, originally Darion was Oklahoma all the way.
Right.
I mean, he committed to Oklahoma. It was over. It was done. Now, obviously we built that relationship with Coach Kerry Cooks. Mm-hmm. And Darion was born in Edmond, Oklahoma, and raised, so that was like a dream come true. But like I know, stories don't always have a story, but ending the way you want it to. So when Coach Cooks left, and it kind of was like okay, and then Coach Griggs, wanted to go in a different. We used to have that same relationship with him as we had with Coach Cook. So it was kind of like, all right, I think what's best for us. One guy I can praise is Coach Lincoln Riley. Coach Lincoln Riley from day one was always professional. He called and reached out like, look, I want Darion. Darion's a part of my class. We could build a relationship with Coach Griggs. And just from a parent perspective, I didn't think that was the best situation. So when he decided to open it back up, Michigan came into the picture, and USC was always there because it's the school that's in your backyard. As a parent, you want your kid to go to USC. I can go to practices. I know coaches on the staff. I can have insight on what's going on. We can all go to the games. We can go to the practices. When we took our official visit to Michigan, it just gave off the feeling that sometimes you have to do what's best for the kid. And from a parent standpoint, the structured environment, I really feel Michigan and the coaching staff at Michigan will help him become a better player. Coach Harbaugh said something when we over on a visit that kind of resonated with my wife and I. It was just that, and he never said anything bad about USC because that's just not the kind of coach he is. But he said that 28-year-old Darion will look back and say, yes, I should have went to Michigan, whereas 18-year-old Darion said, yes, I would go to USC. But it's just that blue collar Midwest, that just mentality, hard work, dedication. We wanted to limit the distractions and just what is going to help him, be a good football player. And ultimately, we want him to graduate. And we just felt like the academic support at Michigan was amazing. And ultimately, that's what we felt was going to be the best situation for him.
I say that parents are undefeated in recruiting, right? Mamas particularly so.
Mamas is undefeated. As a dad, it's kind of like, okay, as a dad, you're looking at depth charts. Every dad goes through it. Regardless if you're a 1-star or 5-star, dad's just looking at depth charts, who they signed last year, who they looking at, the class behind you, what's their track record with DBs. Dad's just looking at all of that. But at the end of the day, when they look to that left, mama has that final say. And don't get me wrong, like, my daughters had to say. They had their opinion, but it was kind of like mom's votes counted as 2 votes. So it was kind of like, at the end of the day, mama, on the official visit, I kept looking over at my wife, like, what you think? And she's looking at me like, I like this, So at the end of the day, yeah, dads can help guide and shape and mold, but mama has that final say, always.
I'm glad you brought up Oklahoma because I was very excited to have Darion in my backyard, and it didn't end up that way, right? And with him being at Michigan, now there are 2 kiddos that I absolutely adore at that program, he and Dax Hill in particular, right? So for me, the idea of watching both of those dudes on one side of the field play keep away from the other team, I'm excited about. For you, did you really know that much about Michigan football before you became a Michigan football parent?
No, I just knew the basics. Michigan's a true original blue blood. Obviously the big house is what stands out, and then Charles Woodson, obviously. Darion originally didn't even really know much about Charles Woodson, but once Michigan kind of came into fold, and they were coming down to we started watching YouTubes and stuff like that, but. I just do the basics of it. Like I said, the big house, obviously Coach Harbaugh, that name resonates, and then, just everything about the program. But once we started deep dive and looking into it, it's like I didn't realize the fan base was so big on a national scale. You get your gear and you start wearing it out around Southern California. You're in gold, blue, left and right, and we're a big belief. We have big beliefs in God doesn't make mistakes. Obviously, he guided us to the University of Michigan for something. And, his tenure there so far has been nothing short of great in terms of academically and athletically so far. He finished the summer with like 3.8 GPA. They have done everything that they said they were, going to do, helping him become a Michigan man. And as a parent, you can't ask for much more than that.
Okay, so I'm going to put myself out here, right? Because I make jokes about your head coach all the time.
Oh.
Okay, all the time. The man continues to give me fodder. And I'm here for the jokes as much as I'm here for the football. But having said that, what are the things that I and perhaps other folks are missing about Jim Harbaugh?
He wants to win. I didn't know much about him either, Going on an official visit as a football fan, I'm like, hey, we get to meet Jim Harbaugh. And she's like, who? And, I'm like, you don't understand. We get into Detroit, I think around 9 o'clock at night. And they say when we have breakfast at 6:30 in the morning at this little diner in Ann Arbor. And we're pulling, and all night I'm just smiling on my face. And she's like, why are you so cheesy? I'm like, babe, it's Jim Harbaugh. Like, it's the Harbaugh. Like, the name is royalty in football. And so she's like, I don't know who this is. I just want to know, is this the best fit for, so. But the funny thing about him that people don't realize is he wants to win. Like, he wants to win. Like, he everything everybody says about Ohio State, about, not winning national championship, he hears it. He knows it. And I think people get the vibe from him sometimes that oh, he's just going through the motions, or he's not really. It just is what it is. No, he sees it, and it fires him. He wants to win badly. That's what the message was. I want to win. And I had concerns of him leaving, and his thing was, well, the job's not done. The job's not finished. I'm brought here to win against Ohio State, and he just gave me the feel that he's done everything in his power to try to do that. Now, obviously, Michigan, is fighting an uphill battle with the way Ohio State's been recruiting, but you can see it with the hard work and the dedication. I mean, he's a perfectionist, so he wants to win badly. We had conversations, and I had to ask. I mean, because not only am I a dad, I'm a fan of college football as well. So when we had our home visit, I think we were watching San Francisco versus Green Bay, and we're talking, and I'm just like, Coach, Ohio State. And he's like, I know. He's like, we got to get it done. I'm like, Coach, but in 2016, that was short. He's like, yeah, but that's just we got to get it done. So he's he's real. He comes off a little different, but he's my kind of guy. He's definitely my kind of guy. He's definitely one of the smartest guys in the room, and he's a big football guy, and he wants to win. But he's going to do it the right way, and he's going to do it his way. And so I think they're going the right way about it. Darion has always played in big games, and like I tell him, in college football that day, there's no bigger game going on than the actual game. So he hears it. I mean, the fans give him about it. The parents, we talk about it. So he knows what's going on. He knows.
I call you a football dad affectionately because of how deep into your kid and in college football, and really from Pee Wee on up you are. But I say that to try to underscore this question. How difficult is it for you to not be able to see, let alone be involved in, his process at Michigan?
Oh, it's hard. That's what I struggle with the most right now. It's like you say you want your kids to go away, but then, when you go away, it's kind of like Darion. I mean, all these kids need support. So you're there every step of the way from well, people see the stars and the offers, but they don't see everything that goes into it as far as the workouts, the 2 workouts a day, 6:30 in the morning, the feet work drills, 7-on-7 tournaments, these camps. I've been to every camp across the country with him. And so you're with them all day, every day. You're bonding, you're doing this, you're doing that. I always joke with my wife. I always mess with her and say, you ain't with the one camp across the country, but on TV, you get the mama where we going. I'm like, I'm feeling some kind of way about that. I'm like, wait a minute, so, but nah, I struggle with it because in obviously in youth football, everything that's going on. You talk to the coaches here in high school football, same thing. At Modern Day, I knew everything that was going on. At Norrbonne, I knew everything that was going on. And so it's kind of like you get to Michigan and it's like, okay, I have no one to talk to. I mean, I'm not going to call Coach Harbaugh. I'm not going to call Coach Jordan. So it's like the only insight I have is him. I try to go on 247 and read a board here and there, but it's only so much on there, especially when no football being played. So it's like I'm dying. Like I have to find a new hobby or something because your life evolves around, a sport and, him in football. And then now it's like he's away from home. And Darion doesn't talk much. Anybody that knows him, he's a quiet kid. He's more about action and talking. So how practice go? Oh, it's all right. I'm like, well, what is all right? You know what I mean? Like, what is the reps? And my wife joked with me the other day. I was calling Darion and trying to get the login to Exos and the film. And he's like, Dad, I'm like, well, give me your login. I'm pressing him. So he finally gives it to me and I log in. And I realized it does device recognition. So even though I had to log in, it wouldn't let me go in because it's linked to his device. And I'm just sitting here on suicide watch. I don't know anything. Like what's going on? I'm trying to text it like you know how schools have the liaisons, the player liaison. I'm trying to text them like, how dare y'all do it? And, it's just like I don't know anything that's going on, and it's just it's been brutal. It's been really brutal but nah, it was a fun process. At the time, I always looked forward to him going to college, and hopefully he goes beyond. But at that point, once he left, I realized that the fun part was youth football, high school football, and now it's just more of a business side of it. So I'm struggling out here right now. Like I'm dying right now.
Well, I mean, like for inside baseball, for the people that are listening, one of the things I learned quickly was just how little access the parents have, and that's how relationships between media members started to form. Is college
Right,
football in particular is so insular. Like I talk with other people that cover other sports. Like for
right,
instance, the joke is the NBA is the leakiest league of all time. Everybody knows
right,
everything, so you feel like a rock star because you know as much as anybody that's in the business will know. Whereas if you're able to
right,
break college football news, you might as well be working the national security beat for the United States
right,
government because it's that
right,
difficult. And the idea that these coaches are one talking to you via Zoom is awesome, but two, just how little you don't know. And yeah, I'm like that with my moms, right? So like my mama asked me
right.
about like, RJ, what you do today? And I might have done 4 segments, I might have done a show, I might be doing whatever, and I'd be like, I'm working, mom. Like, what's going on? That's all you gonna give me is you working?
That's what, and I want no. You pulled up to the Schembeckler Hall. You got up this morning. What you eat? Did it give you gear? What number you get? And he's just like, oh, it's cool, it's solid. He always has this line. He says, "It's smooth." I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand what that means. Like, how's the food up there, Darion? Oh, it's smooth. And then it's kind of just it's to the point where mama gets on the phone and mama could get all this information out. But when it comes to like X's and O's, moms don't always know what to particularly ask. So I gotta kind of feed through her. Like, what did Darion say? Oh, he said it's smooth. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I just don't,
Ask him what
you
scheme
know,
they're running. Is he boundary? Is
right?
he field? Is he playing
That's
slot?
right. And I'm like, well, you don't post. I'm like, you have Instagram. You haven't showed anything on your story. I'm like, do something. Send me a video. Like, what is going on? Like, and he'll send a 10-second clip of what his locker look like. I'm like, what is that? Like, you know, so just, because the hard part is, I think a lot of guys I'm a college football fan and a dad as well. So it's like sometimes through the recruitment process, I had to, learn how to switch those hats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I'm a fan, but also you're a dad. So, but now it's kind of like I'm a college football fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see the inside of things that you don't really get to see. Darion, like, and he's just, oh, all right. And it gets to the point where you feel like you bothering him. So I just be like, all right, I'm gonna let him do his thing. And every now and again, he'll send a clip out the blue. I'll wake up because they're on a 3-hour time difference, East Coast time. So I'll wake up at 7 in the morning and look at my phone and I got a clip of some 101s, and I just be that'll make my whole day. It's like, all right, cool. Like So, but yeah, it's rough, man. It's rough because you're always been in tune, and then now it's just like nothing, cold turkey. You know what I mean? And it's like, man. Like, so. And then the funny thing, Coach Harbaugh doesn't do media at practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I look around, everywhere else. You
Yeah,
got
but
media.
nobody does media at practice. Like you say everywhere else. Who's doing media
Right.
at practice?
Well, I even take, like, the videos of the warm-ups.
Oh,
We
okay.
see
Yeah.
guys, like, I
Yeah.
know at USC, they'll film them walking to practice,
Mm-hmm.
or at Oklahoma, sometimes they'll film them just warming up. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but Coach Harbaugh does zero media, so you're not getting anything. And so I'm sitting there dying, like, what is, like, I think I need to cancel the subscription because I'm not getting anything. So, it doesn't, he doesn't do, the coaches will do an interview here or there, but man, it's like, you don't know anything. And I'm like, I'm waiting on the school, I'm waiting on the school on the Twitter or Instagram to put out, some videos of workout, and I can't get nothing. So it's just like, I am like dying, man. I'm like itching to just find out what's going on, So the little videos he'll send me here and there just make my total day.
I want people to get an understanding of just how difficult, one, it is to get one of these high major offers, and two, what it's like for you as a parent. Because the way that I tend to round these things out, you know me, I love recruiting, I love
Right,
high school, and I like watching the kids in their first couple of years. And then after the first couple of years, they become a little bit more entrenched in what they're doing. So, like the red
right,
shirt year is always going to be the toughest because, you talk about cold turkey, you don't see him,
right,
right? You might not even see him dressed out. But
right,
he comes from a background where Jeremiah Cradell, who's going to play some safety for Oklahoma, was in the same
right,
backfield with him. Elias Ricks, who's going to have to start for LSU, defending champ LSU this year, was in that
Right.
backfield with him. And that was
Right.
at Mater Dei, right? And
Right.
the other thing that I thought was really interesting is, tell me when they take Darion off the field.
Right.
Like they don't
Right.
do it. So like when you watch the kids come up and you see
Right.
that your kid is separating along with these other kids like Credell, like Brew McCoy and others,
Right.
what is it that you are trying to remind yourself about how to interpret your kid's play versus what you talk to other parents about how your kid is playing? Because they got to feel some
Well,
kind of way too.
no, definitely. It's tricky. With college recruiting is one of them things where it's tricky. You can talk to other people about it, and I had to learn it kind of the hard way. Everybody's recruitment is different. Um, like you said, Elias, Jeremiah Credell, Brew McCoy, and Darion. Now, all of them are all Americans, but even within itself, all four of those recruitments are different. Everyone's recruitment is totally different, and it's just and that's something you have to understand as a parent and just realize it. And then it's the developmental process. You have some kids that were youth All Americans. Like Brew McCoy was the type of kid when you walked into a football field in youth, you knew, like in 7th, 8th grade, it was like, oh, Bruce, that name has rung bells in Southern California for years. So he was just one of them kids that just you couldn't really miss. Darion was more of a developmental kid. Like, Darion couldn't get in the defensive stance at 10 years old. I mean, me and his brother would be outside. Like, he always played soccer and was one of the best soccer players out there. And so it was like, okay, it got to a point where I was like, all right, enough with the soccer. And I probably should have stuck with soccer when you see Messi and all these dudes get these $100 million contracts.
Man.
But it was like, all right, you're going to play football. We play football. It's a football house. And so he wanted to play football too. So it was like, all right, what do you want to play? He was like, well, I'll play safety. I was like, okay, well, let's get in the stands. And he couldn't get in the stands. And I'm looking at, his brother, and I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So, this is one of the things where he was never the best player on the team in youth football. He was always developmental. And then that 8th grade year is where it just started to click, and he just started making plays. And I was looking at my wife like, I think we might have something here. Because as a parent, you're always biased. You always have those glasses on, and you always, just the reality of it, you always think your son is better than what he actually is. So I try to be honest with him and upfront. But the key is just the development, because we've seen kids that be All-Americans as kids, and you get to high school and it just doesn't work. So ultimately, you want to make sure they're having fun, because it's a lot. You have workouts, you still have school, you still have all these other things you have to do. And so you just have to make it fun. If I could give any advice to any parent, just make sure the kid is having fun and enjoying it. It may not always go your way, but just make sure they're having fun. There's times when we go to camps and, it'd be one-on-ones, and I'm like, Darion, all these writers are here. This is what, the rankings, and he'll get, let's say he give up a small route, and I'm just in the stands like, oh my God, we talked about it. Like, you know what I mean? But you have to that's where my wife came in, and she's like, keep me level-headed and everything that's going on. But, it started to take off, and it's transitioned from 8th grade to 9th grade, going to Mater Dei, going to a powerhouse. He enrolled with Elias. We're good friends with their family. They're like good friends. And once they enrolled, it just kind of took off with both of them. They're two different style of players, but they're both phenomenal players. And it just took off. And, it's just like, well, where are you going to throw the ball? Are you going to throw it at Darion, or are you going to throw it at Elias? And it just, both of their recruitment started to take off. And for Darion, it was just, literally overnight. He opened up with Nevada. I think that that was my happiest offer, because it was the first one. And as a parent, I was like, I'm not going to have to pay for college. So, I was ecstatic. And I think after Nevada, UCLA came and Oklahoma came, and that was like the pinnacle. I think he broke down and got emotional, because as a child, that was like the ultimate. So after that, it was just kind of like, all right, I got offers now, and as a kid, it's like, okay, I got them, on to the next. But as a dad, it's like, I want every single one. But it was a few offers that really stuck out. Obviously, Michigan was one of them, because he understood what it meant. Oklahoma was a big one for him too, and then USC, because it was the hometown. But I think the misconception a lot of parents get is that these kids just get offers. No, these kids work, and you don't really see it because you see what you read online or when you go to the games. But a lot of I can speak for every kid. They work hard and they make a lot of sacrifices. Darion has made a lot of sacrifices. He had to miss out on movies, parties, just going on dates, and just the little things of being a kid. He doesn't really get to experience. So it's tough. It's a tough situation for a teenager.
For the last question I have for you, Martin, and I really wanted to end with this because I thought it was such a big deal. What does it mean for you as a father who really had to work at getting to know your kids for them to feel the way that they do about you? Do you feel any sort of success? Do you feel any pressure? Forget football for a second.
Right.
I'm learning what it means to be a stepfather, right? I'm in the middle of that with 2 girls. So I can't, I'm trying to help me because I have so many conflicting emotions all the time. And every time I get a kiss on the cheek, it feels like an even bigger win because that wasn't necessarily how it was going to be drawn up. So how do you feel about all of this? I mean, I want to put...
it's a tough situation because as a stepfather, you don't always get that gratification. So it's a tough job that you have to do. But I think the culmination of it is when you start to see the kids mature and they start to realize that, like with Darion, there's a joke within amongst our family is that obviously I'm not a biological father, but my wife and my daughters, they joke around and be like, they act just alike. You know what I mean? And I think the culmination of it is just when you start to see, they call and they check on you. Like a lot of people don't know, my daughter, Micaiah, Darion, obviously with the football, but Micaiah is probably my prized possession. And she's out there in Michigan as well. And that is I'm very overprotective of her. And because she's like my prized possession. And, to see them acknowledge you, oh, that's my dad. That's my dad. And Darion will tell you in a heartbeat, oh, this is my dad. And he's like, well, I want to, go with last name Green-Warren. And I'm like, wait, what? This is great. Really? And it's just, you don't really get that instant gratification, but in the long run, you start to see it and you start to envision it. And when they acknowledge it, that's just the ultimate. That's just the ultimate. And it's just to hear him talk and say things like, well, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my dad. I wouldn't have been here, for my dad and my dad. That right there is the ultimate gratification for me as a parent. That lets me know that my job is done. So
very cool.
That definitely would be it.
That is Martin Warren, the father of Darion Green-Warren, who's a true freshman corner at Michigan. Hopefully they get to play some football. Martin, thanks so much for keeping it 100, for taking some time to talk with us. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that learn not just about your kid and about you, but probably took away some valuable lessons from recruiting. Thank you, man. I appreciate this.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you, too.